We have 3 leader cloths. Take up, the backing and the quilt top. We are about to put the cloth on our rods, but first of all we must use our sticky tape out of our goodies bag, our screws. We also need a Phillips head screwdriver, a pencil and a tape measure. You take your take-up cloth, because that's what we're using now. Take up, take up, take up. We'll find the centre of the take-up cloth and mark it as well. Now we'll lay our cloth down on our table. Each rod is basically done the same way, but follow the markings on your rods. Bring that into the centre, and as you can see, take up goes one way. Place your rod with the mark to the centre of the cloth. We then take our sticky tape, and I'll use a dispenser because it's easier for me, and I just break some pieces off along the rod so that I can just grab them as I need them and put it where the centre is. Then we'll go along, don't stretch your cloth, and take it right down to the end. So that's holding it there for me. And I know this is the way our cloth has to go, because on the take up it indicates this is the way we're going to roll our cloth. Place it so. And if you're unsure of the straightness of your cloth, just run a pencil along the rod to keep it straight. But usually you can just eyeball it. Turn back your section so. If you're going to do a 2 metre rod, this is the way we set our cloth. And just put a piece of sticky tape like so, and do the same on the other end. Like so. Now, if we wanted to make it a 3 metre rod, we would slip our extensions in, and using our screws and our Phillips head screwdriver, you'll find a leader hole there, and we can just put the screw in and screw it down like so. Pop it into this section here, and you'll still notice we're going in the right direction. We then line up our little holes here for our screw. They might be slightly out, but don't worry about it too much. Just screw them down and do the same down the other end also. Now we've got a 3 metre rod. We release that extra piece of fabric, we turn it back and just take our rod down, and we find it much easier to put the cloth on this section here rather than trying to take it right along the first go. So that's where our cloth will go now, like so, and we would stick it down the same way we did before. Go down to the other end, peel that back, and you can see how easy this is. See, take up, we do all the rods the same, but watch those arrows, which way the arrow goes. Red to red, yellow to yellow, black to black. Take up, quilt top, backing. They will have take up, quilt top, backing, backing. So remember that when you're putting your rods together. And just wind it up, and you can see where the arrow says wind clockwise, that's the way you wind it. Make sure it is straight at both ends, you haven't got any creases. If your cloth is really badly creased, I suggest you iron them prior to putting them on. There we go. Roll up your rods. You've now got them set for a 2 metre rod. So you've got one little job to do. We take a safety pin. We place our safety pin in, and you can see the difference there, at least a ½ inch. You can see I'm putting the pin parallel to the cloth. Right, we have now finished our rods. As you can see, take up to take up, backing to backing, quilt top to quilt top. Arrows are going that way, so it's anti-clockwise. This one is going clockwise. You have 3 ratchets at this end and only 2 ratchets at this end. So you're not missing one. The quilt top only has 1 ratchet. We are ready to put our tabletop together. I am doing a 2 metre tabletop. Place the 2 sections together like so. Now if we wanted to make it into a 3 metre, all we have to do is pull that apart and place the 3rd one in the centre. Take our nuts and bolts and take the longer bolts. Then we take our goal posts. We have 2 goal posts for each end, making a total of 4. The shorter screws, the bolts I should say, 2 at each end. And 2 nuts to go with them. We will need our spanner for this one. I like to put these on whilst the table is still upside down. Place it through the hole and just tighten it off. Same with the other one. Your goalposts to hold your end assemblages or your rod carriers, whichever you like to call them. Tighten those up. We'll go down to the other end and do exactly the same thing. We will flip the table over. This is my front, and you can see my goalpost here. Now what we'll do is actually put our rails on, or sleeves. These sleeves cover the area here. As you can see, there's a join there. Now if we left it like that, we're going to have a problem when we have our carriage run over the top of it. Taking a sleeve, we will place it on this rail and push down until we go right down to the end. Don't run your hand along it because it really does burn. Some friction builds up and it can be quite painful. Now you see there, that's one. And like I said, once you put these rails on, there is no way this table is going to come undone. because you've got 2 bolts holding it together. You've got your little guides to hold it together, and you've also got your sleeve to hold it together. You'll notice that I've got excess sleeve left over. Now remember, this is to cover a 3-metre table. So therefore we have this excess here. And what I like to do is just place it under the table and use the little plastic strips to slip them on. If you haven't got those, just put a little bit of tape on it, just like that, just to hold it. We want them out of the way so children will not poke their eyes out on it, or the animals or whatever you've got running around the floor. We are now going to put the end assemblages on, or rod carriers. We take the right hand side, has the names of the rods that are going to go in that area. It also has the clappers. Take the hand wheel, place it through the slot in your goal post, then just tighten it off. Don't have to tighten it too much at this point. Taking our back piece, which is the take-up rod, we will then place that one on the other goal post. This is the back. And this is the front. We'll go down to the other end and take our other rod carrier or end assemblage and put the hand wheel through, clipping our end assemblage over. Seem to be having a problem with this one. There we go. Right. You'll notice that there is Velcro on the back side of the end assemblage. And I've placed the Velcro down the bottom. It used to be up the top, but now we've placed it down the bottom because of the way we use our clamps. Now we'll take our trolley and place it onto our table and slide it backwards and forwards to make sure that it is rolling correctly. I'll take one of my clamps down here because we'll need that in preparation of putting our sewing machine on. You'll see why when we get there. I'll place the other one here. We take our carriage. Now we can place our stylus on now. Anywhere you're comfortable with it. I like it on the right hand side of the trolley, on the back side of it. So I'll place my stylus on, put that through, it's our pointer. Just bring that up so it's out of the way. Be careful you don't stick yourself on it. I'm going to place some plastic onto my tabletop, because I'm going to do a pantograph. I've got 2 pieces of plastic, clear plastic, and I'll place that like so, and just take a bit of sticky tape and stick it down. Right, the back of the trolley overhangs the back of the frame. The sewing machine. We take our sewing machine, and I have here a Janome 1600P, but you can use any sewing machine at all. It does not matter what type of machine you have. The throat area on this particular machine is 9 inches. On my Bernina it's 7 inches. We take our foot control and place it under the lever first. Now, if it was a smaller foot control, like this one, I would need to build it up, and I would suggest that you use a bit of styrene from the packing. And just place it underneath and just activate the pedal. Make sure it's working. Place it underneath. Then I would place my sewing machine in. As you can see, there is no way that I could have put my sewing machine, my foot control, in the carriage once the machine is on. Just central the sewing machine and then tighten the thumb screws at the sides. With the excess cord that you have, just lay it down beside the sewing machine. It's not going to get into trouble or anything like that with it. Just place your cord, you plug into the machine, says she, on the way up. There you go, at least we know it, we can't put it in upside down. And this excess cord, we don't really want that tangling around our wheels. So we'll just lay it along the edge of the sewing machine. So when we tighten our thumb screws, we'll be able to keep it in place, like so. If you try wrapping it around anything, it's just as likely to come out, and you could do some damage to it too, so try not to put too much pressure on the cords. Just tighten it and underneath. Right. And tighten your thumb screw. So once it's under there, it shouldn't come out. Put your power lead in. Now I've had one machine which the foot control was so deep, so wide, that they couldn't put the plug into their sewing machine. So what you'd have to do in that case, if the area at the back is not big enough, well, it'd be big enough but you can't put your power cord in, is to actually build up the sewing machine part. It's quite safe. You don't have to worry about it dropping off onto the floor because it won't happen. It will sit there nice and comfortably because there's virtually no vibration when you're sewing and moving the machine. It's not going to topple off or anything. So now we've come to the point where we are going to put our carriage on. Now you may need to get a bit of help with this, but what I find is that if I'm by myself, if I place my sewing machine, feet, wheels, the back wheels on first, like so, that should be right. Now, remember we put our clamps up there? We're going to wrap our clamp around the actual foot control of the sewing machine. Now the sewing machine is safe at this point. We don't leave it there for too long. We will take our take-up rod. Remember the take-up rod had an arrow, it's got its name, etc. That always goes down to the clacker end. We undo our bolts at each end and place them down here through the hole where it says take up on that end corresponds with this end. Once we've placed this on, we've put this through the throat of the sewing machine. Our machine is now safe, but if we leave it like it is now, it could accidentally fall off. Those wheels are very, very easy flowing, and they're meant to be. Okay, I'll just take this one out and do exactly the same as I did before. When we have got that machine in place, we can now adjust this end assemblage here, or rod carrier. We want our fingers to be able to just fit between the sewing machine and the rod. So we would bring our machine over here again and put our fingers underneath and drop that so our fingers are just caught underneath, then tighten it off. So now we can adjust the front one so it's level, and we've got holes at the side where it can be indicating, and you can see the machine was sliding backwards then and it didn't fall off. This one here, we would adjust it to the same height as the one at the end here. I'm just checking where I had it. 4 holes down. And there's little holes at the side where it'll actually easy to line up both ends. 2, 3, 4. Bring that one up. And we're now ready to put the other rods on. We will put our quilt top rod on. And again, we do exactly the same thing. We've got quilt top down this end, we've got the name down this end, the clackers are at this end. So obviously, it goes at this end. Once this is on, we will then proceed to mark the centre of our quilt, our leader cloths. The ratchets on back to front, but apart from that, you shouldn't have any problems. It's easy enough to turn them around. You may find that the foot control is a little bit dry, so the actual cord will not go back to its proper place smoothly. Just wipe the dust off the cord and place a bit of Vaseline on that cord area. Just a little bit, make sure there's no dust on it, and if you do that you'll find that it will actually move a lot easier. It's just that it's a build up of dust, etc., or dries out. Now we're ready. See how nicely it moves? Now ready to mark the centre of our quilt top, our rods. And I'm just going to use the table as my centre mark, because remember this is a half table. Centre to centre. You try and use the cloth rather than trying to use any measurements, etc. Wind it up. Hear the clacking noise? That's engaging it. It's like a brake. Again, just turn it. Nice and easy. No problems at all. Take your machine down again so it's out of the way. And again we can place our strap around the throat of the machine to hold it away, just in case you've got a little bit of unevenness in the floor. Okay, so now we'll go to our quilt. Put your fingers between the rod and the throat of the machine, the top part of the machine, and that'll give you enough clearance. To activate the foot control, we push down on the lever. We can hold it like so, we can hold it like that. The machine will continue to go until you let go. Our quilt top is 10 centimetres smaller than our backing, and our wadding is the same size as our backing in width. Now we are ready to put our quilt on and to start quilting. First I will put my scissors on. My pins, I like to use a pin cushion, and I've got a tin in the bottom there so that the pins don't go through and stick into me. So we supply the pins to you, and they're the pins I'll be using. So I just put my pin cushion on, and also we'll take a piece of wadding and place that onto our shoulder and just pin it on. It's not very elegant, but you'll find out why I use it when we get started. Now we're ready to go. With our quilt top, we make sure that we've pressed it and everything's quite right with it. The top and the bottom must be straight across, and the sides must be straight also. So we place a pin in the top center, place a pin in the bottom, making sure everything is straight. If it is not straight, straighten it up, take it to your board and cut it with your rotary cutter. Now if I'm going to turn my quilt, I will then place pins on the side, like so, so that I know where my sides are. Do the same on this one. Another pin. So the quilt top is now ready. That's the top. Just leave that aside. Then I take my backing, and remember your backing and wadding should be 10 centimetres larger than your quilt top. The wadding preferably a little bit longer, because longer than the backing, because it does tend to shrink up, and you might be disappointed when you get halfway through your quilt or nearly finished your quilt and find that your wadding has disappeared. The backing is ready. Now my wadding, I will only mark one end of this, and I like to use a safety pin rather than to using a straight pin, because when we flip the quilt around, pins will not come out. If we use straight pins, when we flip the quilt, we could be flipping the pins out. Okay, so our backing, wadding and quilt top is ready to go on. Taking our backing, which is the cream coloured one, we will place our backing. We'll undo our clacker there so that our backing fabric can roll out. We take our backing and we flip it over the back of the frame. See how it is hanging at the back there? Now if it's a bigger quilt, of course, it's going to go further along and further over that way. We then take our centre, and we've already marked our centre of our quilt backing, and we've marked our centre of our take-up cloth, our backing cloth. Two pieces together, edge to edge. There is our backing, there is our leader cloth. Two edges together. We then start to pin, placing the pin through the backing into the other side of the backing and out through to the leader cloth. So we pin approximately 1/8 of an inch from the top, and I just put a few pins and I run along this area here and put a pin in. Then I come back and I top to tail the pins so that the top of our pin is touching the tail of our pin there. Just continue on until we come back to the centre. We always start in the centre, always the centre, and work out. If we started at the end, our centre would never be the centre. So we'd have our quilt pinned on skew-iffy. So we've top to tail our pins halfway through. I'm going to take that pin out there, then I will go along this side and I'll put a pin in every so often. Once you get used to this, you won't be able to do any other way. So make sure edge to edge, pin through the take-up cloth, out through the backing. We're actually doing the backing cloth, leader cloth. We'll just pin along and just move your pins as you require them and just pin them along. Very, very simple, very easy, no dramas. Don't stretch your backing, and if you have an area that doesn't quite take a pin, just sort that pin out. Then allow your backing to go straight over the back there like so. Put your clacker on, make sure your leader cloth is straight, there is no puckers or anything in it. Then we start winding and making sure that everything is pulling in nicely for you. You don't want this to flip around, because if that flips around it could distort your top. Keep going until you virtually come to the edge. Now the backing, the way I do this one, I take it under the quilt top roller to the backing roller. Then I'll go around to the other side and pin come around to the front of the frame and we wind up our backing roller so that it's just taut, not too tight. It's not a trampoline, don't make it too tight. Right, now we're going to put our quilt top on. Now remember, your backing was wrong side up, your quilt top is right side up. So I've just unrolled the quilt top roller and I've taken my quilt top flip my quilt top over, and this is right side up. Again, we've had a center pin, so center to center, and put your pin in there. Once we've done that, you can see, again, we just take our quilt top to the back of the frame, making sure it's hanging over the top there. By doing this, we can add a little bit of tension to our quilt when we are winding. So we put our clacker on, then we start winding exactly the same way as we did with the other two. Place my wadding underneath the quilt top roller and over the backing roller, and take my wadding so it's touching the take-up roller. Make sure your wadding is straight and centre to centre. If the top of your wadding isn't quite straight, just straighten it out so that it's not crooked. If you leave it crooked, of course it's going to be quilted crooked, and you'll find you'll have all sorts of problems halfway through. Now we've laid our quilt top over the top. We'll need to have a closer view of this now. We'll place some pins in through the quilt top, through the wadding and the backing, then bring the pin straight up again. We're not going to closely pin this because we're going to take these pins out once we start quilting. Right along until we're ready to start. Right, we're here now. With our wadding, we don't want it hanging down the front here. We just can't have it hanging down there. Not only is it a nuisance, but we won't be able to operate our frame, our machine. So what I'm doing is just rolling the wadding up, and I'll roll it towards me because I find it easier this way. Just roll it up, and even if it's a big piece of wadding, you do exactly the same. This is approximately 2 meters long, so you can see it's quite a bit of wadding. And I've just laid it between the two rollers out of the way. I've also got a clearance underneath. Now we'll go to our sewing machine, which is unthreaded, and I'll just thread it. Now with our sewing machine, we make sure our feed dogs are down, or we have the special plate that Janome has to put on over their feed dogs. We also put on our stippling foot or our darning foot so that we can do free motion quilting. Now I'm just going to thread this needle, drop the needle, bring our machine down as far as it'll come, making sure everything is straight and comfortable for you. Also, before we start, make sure that your quilt is not too tight, and that this is called the pinch test. If you can pinch your quilt like so, you know your quilt is the right tension. We bring our machine down as far as it will come to me. I've got on top a 75 brissant, and underneath in the bobbin I've got 120 brissant. I'm going to stitch up the side, back tack. We'll cut off those threads because we don't want the threads to catch around our needle. Drop the needle, bring up the bobbin thread, and cut off your thread. We put the excess threads on our shoulder, a piece of cloth. Drop the needle, and you see how I'm a 1/4 inch from the edge. Bring up the bobbin thread, stitch up the side. Now, if you've got fullness in this quilt, this is where you'd start walking up the side of the quilt. We then stitch across the top. And you might have my hand in your way here. Okay, so we're going across the top, and again, we will make sure our quilt top is flat. And just don't worry about how crooked or straight that area is, because it's going to be hidden in your seam allowance. Take away, put our finger underneath the thread, take our machine back to where the thread is, drop the needle, then we bring up the bobbin thread. Then we can snip it off with our trusty scissors. We bring our machine as far forward as possible. We always stitch up and not down. We stitch up so that we can take in any fullness that might be in our quilt. We'll end up with dog's ears as such if we keep pushing it down, because by the time we've finished our quilt, we'll end up with a 1/2 inch that we won't know what to do with. Now, I'm going to stitch across this line here, which is supposedly my block line, and I'll actually try and use a ruler. Now with this ruler that I'm going to use, what it is just a 1 inch rule, a 6 by 1 inch ruler, but I've got 2 of them together. Now be very, very careful when you use rulers, because you could easily jump off just a few inches, and actually keep your needle down in your work when you're doing this. It's always a real pain when you're doing a straight line. Now you can use your ruler like I'm doing now. I'll just go straight across, or you can actually guide your machine across. Depends on how many drinks you've had, how straight your seam is. If you go out of your seam, just go and back and pull it undone and do it again. Go straight across. Not too fast. We're actually at the back of the machine. We've got our hand behind the foot. We're actually guiding it. We're stopping the machine from moving down or up. And by doing it that way, we keep the machine fairly straight, on a straight line. Now I'm just going to ease a little bit of corners in there, because there we go, straight across, a couple of stitches back, tie off, then take our machine, bring our needle up, take our machine away, take our machine away, drop the needle, and bring up our bobbin thread. I hope I didn't bend the needle in. I don't think I did. Okay. Now I'm going to remove these pins out of the top of the quilt because we don't need them anymore. And I'm just going to quickly go on to a pantograph. When you place your clamps on, don't put them on too tight. We don't want to warp the backing. We can work from the back of the frame by using the stylus. I've laid a pattern along here, just a very simple feather pattern. There's three ways we can do this. We can have it so that it goes around the corner. Then we would need a left and a right corner pattern. Or we can have a dead end feather. So we'd need one of each of those to put on the ends of the feather. To do around the corner, we must have a mitre here so that we can actually see where our points are. So I'm just drawing a mitre through this here by using a bit of masking tape, and then lining up my corner. I've got a left and a right, and if I was to go around a corner, this is a quick, very quick way of showing you. I would take my machine, first of all I've got to make sure that that pattern is going to fit within our area that we've got to quilt. We just bring the machine along and check to make sure that it's going to fit. We then bring our machine to the corner and place our corner pattern level with this mitre so that we know where it's to sit. We have used contact and just move that so that it will fit into that mitre. You see that the pencil line that I've drawn on the masking tape and the mitre on the actual corner piece. I'll take a bit of masking tape and just tape that down. I would go to the other end and do the same with this one. The other method, you would also make sure that you take these pieces of masking tape off. We would use what we call a dead end pattern. And this pattern would sit at the end of our design, so we'd full stop virtually. That's where it would stop. So we'd bring our machine down as far as we want it to come. So if I wanted that dead end to finish here, that's where I would have it. And just line that up, put a bit of masking tape on. And you can see I've got contact on my patterns so that I can reuse them time and time again. I don't have to worry about damaging the pattern. So this is called a dead end pattern. Now what we do is, because we're going to need to finish that particular pattern off, we need to come in and we'll come around so that we can see where that's going to finish and start. So our pattern will come through, and as you can see, we can finish that pattern nicely. We do exactly the same at the other end. See if we've got this lined up correctly, and follow that pattern through. Make sure the foot's down. If you don't drop your foot, be in all sorts of strife. Now, where are we going to start? Start down here. Pull up your bobbin thread. When you're doing a pantograph pattern, you should actually have your needle down, like we did before, and have it going slow. Don't have it too fast. A couple of stitches, backtack stitches. Okay, get rid of those threads out of the way if you can. Okay, now we'll try and follow this pattern through. Now we've got this actual pattern going in one direction, but I'm just showing you as it stands. I'm not changing this particular pattern at all. So we'll just carry on and see if we can finish it off. Not being on the line. Follow through and try and keep a steady rhythm. Down, around, and around there, because remember I made an extra. And we don't watch what we're doing out on the quilt. Stitches. Now, needle up, take the machine away, drop the needle, bring up your bobbin threads. Okay. So basically, there's our pantograph we've done there. We can actually put the spine through it if we wish, but we can leave it like that. Now I'd probably go over that and echo that around so that it stand out better. When we wind the quilt forward, we will put our wadding up the top. And I like to hold this backing roller because it does tend to unravel very quickly. I'm just going to wind that a little bit forward so that I can go down to the next box. Okay. Now, put our clacker back on. We'll put our wadding back down where it belongs. Make sure everything is flat and straight. Put our clamp back on. Bring our machine down as far as it will come towards us. Drop your needle, bring up your bobbin thread like we did before. And you do this every time you move your quilt. Stitch up the side. This is called floating your quilt. You see, I'm not touching the side of my quilt. It stays reasonably straight. And just clip that off. Bring my machine down as far as it'll go. And when you first start, just do a practice cloth like I'm doing here. And do whatever you feel like doing. Machine away. Needle down and pull up your bobbin thread. Now when you've finished with your starness, just make sure you lift that, because you can do some damage to your rails if you leave it down and it can grab. So just leave it like that. Come down here. And we can actually drop our needle again right here. And remember, I said to you, I never stitch straight up. You can if you want to. If you've got an area which you think you can cover, you can do it that way, but remember you're going to have joins all the way through. I'm doing a couple of stitches there to hold, needle down, use your ruler if you want, and do the same as we did before. Remember, you're guiding your machine. And I'm just going to pull that back. This fabric has a little bit of stretch in it, so I've got to be careful with it. I'm just going to walk it through. Just keep going until you get across to the other side. What I'm going to do is just some free motion quilting in the next couple of blocks, just to show you what you can do. And like I said, it's just a practice block, so don't get too tied up with it. Don't put yourself into a knot. Almost to the end. Once we come to there, we back tack, 3 stitches, needle up, take your machine away, drop your needle, bring up your bobbin thread. Okay, now we can do whatever we like. This particular design that I'm going to do now, I call it teardrops. There's probably other names for it also, but it's so easy and it's a fantastic fill-in. So we do teardrop, going, teardrop, echo, 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 and you can wander all over your quilt with it. And just keep it going. I might actually turn up the speed of the machine. It's on the tortoise. I don't like that speed. That's okay for our pantograph, but not for our stitching. Just going to take that thread away and off we go again. See how I'm filling in? Keep it going and we'll fill this whole block in. Now your stitch length will be guided by you on how fast you move your machine or how slow you move the machine to the speed it's going. Now this particular stitch that I'm doing is quite a large one. And I basically do like to have a large stitch. So everybody to their own. Don't get too pedantic about how deep these echoes can be. It's your quilt. You do whatever you want to. And have a lot of fun. This is very relaxing. Echo. Over here. Down here. A couple of back stitches. Needle up. Now we'll go to the next block. Now we've come to our medallion. This medallion is actually 8 inches. Normally we would not be able to do that in our sewing machine, but I'm going to show you how you can do your medallion in 2 sections. I will start at the side here, and I'm doing this free motion. Just go around. I'm going to do feather around, follow the ring, stop here, then we'll go inside, follow through, stop there. Now you can see I've come halfway around the medallion. I will now undo my backing and quilt top roller and wind my quilt forward with the needle down. Just tighten off, bring your clamps just over a little bit. Now we continue on, follow through, coming round, 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 and go back. And as you can see, we have virtually completed an 8-inch medallion. We can stipple in this area here if we wish. We can do something in the centre of the medallion if we wish. But once we have finished that medallion, we can bring it back down and continue on where we were before if we wish. Just undo that, wind it back this way, and I can finish off in the centre. This is a washout pen that I've used here. You just spray it with a little bit of carb soda and water and it comes out very, very easily. I'm just going to do some petals in the centre just to fill in the centre because it's just too barren. Anybody can do this. This is so easy to do. Just take the threads away. And just finish off. There we go. Cut the back tip. Needle up. Take the machine away. Bring the machine back. Drop your needle. Bring up your bobbin thread. And there we've got our medallion. All in one go. When you're setting your pantograph up, and if you've got a centre to centre your pantograph, we make sure that we find the centre of the quilt to the centre of the pantograph, and by doing that we place our needle down in our work up the top in the centre, and then make sure that our pattern is in the centre of our stylus pen. We have a dead end pattern. I've placed here a section of pattern which I've actually put contact on, and I'm able to place that in a position where I can trace my pattern through, and I make sure that that is in the right position by again following my needle up the top and then laying that down, and because I have contact over that pattern I'm able to put masking tape on there without damaging it. And we go down to the other end of the pantograph and do exactly the same at the other end, and you can see I have an identical one at this end, making sure it is lining up with my pattern at the other end. Right, if I wish to go around the corner with this pattern, I would have a corner pattern, and I would line this up here right at the corner on my pattern, on my quilt top, and bring the pattern around the corner, and as you can see this will follow the line through, and I'd do the same at the other end. We would have a left and a right. If I didn't want to do that, I could finish off my dead end borders like so and just place a heart in the end like so. Now we are going to release our quilt. We bring our machine over, drop the needle as we should do, bring up the bobbin thread. The reason we drop the needle and bring up the bobbin thread is that we don't want any threads at the back of the quilt. Stitch up the side, then make sure you've got needle down because you're going to be wandering off otherwise. Take every second pin out until we come to the last pin. When we come to the last pin, we remove that pin, flatten that down. Now if you've got loose borders here, we can actually walk this in once we start stitching the last row. Start stitching along. Now if it has any fullness there, we can actually walk it in. Just bring your machine along, flatten that down. You see I'm walking that in. So if there is fullness, I won't have to worry about it. We've got our hand at the back of the machine. There we go, last pin coming up, and we'll just smooth that down and walk it in until we come to this last pin. Take it out. You don't want to run over it. You'll end up breaking a needle or blunting it. Now we'll sew up the side and we're finished. Drop your needle, bring your needle up, take your needle away as we did before, and bring up your bobbin thread. Cut it off. I'll cut away the excess wadding and I'll leave about 1 inch there, so that if I wish to put part of it into my binding, to puff up my binding, I can do so. When we release our clackers, we make sure we take tension off of them. Then we can flick it back and release it. Now that we've got the excess wadding off and it's released from our quilt top, we can wind our quilt back to wherever we wish to go. So if I stop there, I can actually now echo this area here. And when you echo, you don't have to worry about being spot on. It's your quilt, you do whatever you like to it. Just finish off there. Bring up your needle, take your machine away, pull up your bobbin thread. You don't want to leave any bobbin threads at the back. Don't use the scissors on your sewing machine. Those scissors are okay for whilst you're doing straight sewing, etc. But if you wanted to do a quilt, there is no way that you want those big lumpy bird's nests at the back of your quilt. Now I've run out of bobbin on my machine, so I'd like to change the bobbin. First of all, I'll take my full bobbin from the top. That's where I wind my bobbins. Then I will take the plate off the front of my machine. Now if your machine is a side loading machine, you would open it and take your bobbin through. Well, on the Bonina is on this side, on the left hand side. The other machines have a top loading, so we drop the bobbin in here, the top loading side. As you can see, we're quite able to get to our sewing machine. Take our bobbin out. Now, when we change our bobbins, always take a brush, and I use a paint brush because it's nice and big, and just sweep out your bobbin case, just to get that excess fluff out. Then place your bobbin back in. Take my full bobbin off, put my empty bobbin case back on, so that I can rewind another bobbin whilst I'm sewing. Okay. We're now going to take our quilt off and we're going to turn our quilt. So we unpin the pins. Make sure you don't put your pins on your table because they could get caught around the wheels of your machine or cause scratching on the tabletop itself, or damage something anyway. Undo the clacker again like we did before and pull our quilt leader top out. So take out the pins. Remember we left pins on the sides. As you can see, there's our quilt so far. Now the reason I'm going to turn it is because I'm just going to show you how I actually stitch in the ditch in one continuous line. Plus I'm going to do my full, I'm going to do some freehand feathers along here and there. I'm not going to use the same border pattern again. So now we'll take it and we'll cut off the excess so that I can pin it on and finish it off. Now make sure that this doesn't pull over because we want to keep that quilt nice and straight, and just roll it up until about there. And then we go around to the back side of the quilting frame and pin it onto the take-up roller. once we have removed, put the quilt back on, you can see that the quilt top roller is now redundant. We can leave it on as it is, or we can remove it and take it away. If you remove it, it's going to give you a bigger visual effect. Okay, now you can see we've got a full visual view of our quilt, and we can work out what we want to do to it next. I'm just going to finish off the borders just so we can get it off, because we virtually have finished. Once you have finished your quilt, you then get some water with a little bicarb in it and spray it to remove the pen marks. Now, do not mark your quilt whilst this is here on your frame, because the markings will go through to the wadding and you'll never get it out of the wadding. So mark your quilt before you put it onto your frame. Now, this is a quilt pouncer. It has fine chalk in it. Just give it a bit of a tap so that it will release the chalk. See there? Put your stencil, just rub your pouncer across the stencil, lift it off, and like magic, there it is. Another item that you can use that won't damage your quilt are the Clover Charcoal pen liners. And if we want to draw a straight line, all we need is a ruler and our charcoal pen, and it leaves quite a nice thin line if we wanted to do angles, etc. on our quilt. A little grid, we could do it that way by lining up our liner. Another way of transferring your design onto your quilt is to use this Stitch and Ditch. It is a special paper which is used in heritage stitching, etc. It's a very fine paper. We can pin that to our quilt in a place that we wish it to be and stitch around it, and once we've done that we can tear it away. It's very, very good because it doesn't leave little bits and pieces like ordinary tissue paper does. I'm just going to fill in this area here. Relax. I actually prefer to free motion quilt rather than follow patterns. I'm more comfortable with it. I'm going to ditch stitch the areas that I didn't ditch stitch before. Remember, I turn the quilt so that I have a continuous line of stitching. And stitch along, go right through. Very quick and easy. Keep those threads out of the way, because I can tell you it's no fun getting it caught around the foot of your machine. And we clamp onto the side of the quilt. Remember, you're backing and wadding only. We don't want to touch that quilt. Then underneath, and just stick it onto the Velcro. Now, don't have it too tight, otherwise you're going to stretch your backing, and there's nothing worse than stretched backing. So we're now ready to finish off our last row of stitching. Whilst you're quilting, you'll get to a point where the machine is a bit sluggish. It's hard to move, it drags. That's because the roll is getting so thick that it needs to be lifted up. To do that, we go down to the end of our frame. At each end, we have a separate piece that holds our take-up. We undo this and lift it up until we can get our fingers underneath. And see how the machine is now moving by itself virtually. See how it's freed up now? So I've just, as you can see, we've got holes here, and we can sort of gauge where we will have to adjust the other end. So I'll just go down and adjust the other one so it's the same as that one. Just put a piece of wadding or cloth there and just run your machine backwards and forwards to clean the wheel, to get the residue dirt off the wheel. And make sure there is no threads or anything around the wheel so that they run nice and smoothly. Right, for my last piece here, I'm just going to do a feather, a free motion feather. A couple of stitches. First of all, we do the spine, coming through, teardrop, and we keep those feathers laying down, coming through, follow the line. Very simple, very easy. Now come up the other side and follow through. We could have done another spine, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to come through and keep those feathers parallel. Now drop my needle because I'm going to come back here and snip off some threads so that they don't get tangled. Now I'm going to echo my feather. Once I've done that, I can do some curlies at the end. Come up and finish echoing. Okay, now I've finished. I've taken my quilt off, and as you can see, I've actually sprayed it with water and all the blue has come away from it, and you can see how well it has come up. I've done a different border in each of them. The back, you can see, is absolutely perfect. There is no tucking, no nothing. But we have now finished our quilt. You do your quilt. You just put some quilt fabric on and off you go. Do whatever you'd like to do.